ZIMBABWE would not invest so much infrastructure, energy and resources into the electoral process if voting didn't work. We want to emphasize to all the citizens, to young people, to professionals, to people in urban areas, people in rural areas, elections work. And if there's ever been a need for Zimbabweans to come together, it's now, because our change depends on it. We cannot afford a further 5 years of the same. We are winning by elections. We are. And that's something that I'm sure Mr. Makone is profoundly aware of. The citizens are aware of it. But I want to emphasize that we're winning despite the odds. We're winning despite the odds, but that doesn't make us blind to the odds. The kind of margins of error which have been spoken about will make a huge difference come the harmonized election. So the fact that we are winning elections is not going to stop us from demanding electoral reforms. Those electoral reforms are necessary. And if anything, the by-election process for us, the reason we are participating is because they're a dry run to see the efficacy, the readiness of ZEC, to test whether they pass the integrity test, the constitutionality test, the transparency test, and as the dossier that we submitted indicates, they're failing on a number of fronts. Citizens themselves will have gone to polling stations during the by-elections and found their names not there. You'll see a husband, their name is in the voters' roll, and yet the wife is being posted somewhere else. The presiding officer says, well, just go and check Kunemamuma polling station to check if your name was there. That's simply not acceptable, which is why we insist on a credible vote. It's known in various constituencies, in various wards, that ZANU-PF has been dishing out, handouts to citizens who can demonstrate that they voted for ZANU-PF through a photo of a ballot slip. We also have the issue of traditional leaders who are captured by ZANU-PF. People are told, that assisted voter crisis is creating huge problems for us, and we've drawn this to the attention of ZEC. You can't have a situation where people are told you're going to be followed, you're going to be accompanied in the polling station so that people check where you voted. That detracts completely from the need for security of the vote and privacy of the vote. So when all is said and done, we continue to insist that if we don't resolve these issues, we're going to have another disputed election like the one we had in 2018. And the aftermath of that election tells a big story. Just the other day, we were commemorating the 1st of August shootings that took place by the military. That's the sort of response that comes from the citizenry themselves. It's not driven by political actors. When people are dissatisfied with the manner in which the election is run. So everything we're talking about now and the pressure we're mounting in good time is to ensure that we don't have that again. And we do want to reassure the citizens that we have lobbied and we continue to lobby both SADC and the African Union on these issues. There's need for long-term monitoring of our electoral playing field. There's no point just coming on the night before election day to try and assess whether the voting environment is free and fair, when throughout the year preceding the election, our members have been incarcerated, they've been shot, they've been abducted, they've been persecuted on a number of fronts. That simply does not cut it and does not meet the test of a transparent, free, fair, verifiable election set out. The rural voters are not as impressionable as society would like to believe, or as the traditional leaders themselves would like to believe. They know that the suffering they're facing is suffering that will continue if they don't vote for change. Unfortunately, the crisis in Zimbabwe doesn't discriminate. When you go into the store and you cannot afford bread, you cannot afford mealie meal, you cannot afford cooking oil, it doesn't matter whether you support the CCC or ZANU-PF, everybody is suffering, and it's even worse in the rural areas because we've had a drought, there's a looming food crisis as well. So those citizens are awake and we're constantly conscientizing them and deliberately creating strategies to ensure that they're safe come voting day. And I think we employed a number of those strategies, for example, in Chipinge, to ensure that a citizen is allowed to vote, to ensure that our polling agents are on the ready to identify traditional leaders who on voting day are intimidating citizens. So it's not as though we're sitting back and complaining, sitting back and feeling sorry for ourselves. We do have strategies in place, but that does not take away from the constitutional obligation of ZEC to monitor these events, to ensure that all parties comply with the code of conduct, and to ensure that they don't stray in that regard. You'll be aware of what happened. There's that video of a rural meeting taking place, people saying, no, Chamisa ngauraiwe, bambe triple C ngauraiwe. All those things, ZEC should be alert. You can't have the police conducting a month-long investigation when there's evidence that's clear as day that ZANU-PF is doing the wrong thing. So we are pushing that traditional leaders thing. It's top of mind in our reform. President Nelson Chamisa is on record, our chain champion-in-chief, saying that our candidate selection process in 2023 or for the 2023 elections is going to be a complete departure from the past. All candidates, all are going to be selected by the communities they wish to represent. We're going to obviously unveil, when we closer to the time of our launch, the process by which this should be done. What we implore to the citizens is plug in to the community candidate selection process. It's no longer business as usual where a candidate is foisted upon a particular community. People are going to choose for themselves. And people are going to lead in terms of the criterion. We are doing consultations. People insist on a person who lives in the community, a person who's active in the community, a person who's got integrity, a person who's competent, a person who believes in the transformation agenda. So all these things are going to be criteria that we're going to use, that the citizens are going to be at the forefront of deciding, because the key guiding philosophy or ideology or North Star of the CCC is that citizens should be at the center of all decisions that are made. And so the parliament you'll see in 2023 following the election is going to be a parliament that you select, and this starts from the candidate, the movement candidate selection process itself. So let's all plug in. You don't wait until voting day in 2023 to participate. We're going to roll out both the volunteer program and this community candidate selection program to ensure that you decide who you want to represent. Voting is a constitutional imperative. Nobody has the right to take the right to vote away from any citizen. Citizens deserve to choose their leaders. They have the right to choose who represents them in council, in parliament, and at presidential level. It's citizens who choose. And that's why the will of the people is a sacrosanct principle of any constitutional democracy. And so nobody, ZANU-PF cannot take away people's right to vote. Coming specifically now to SADC and the AU. Now obviously we have sharpened our approach significantly since the 2018 election. We took very important lessons, and even with these by-elections. And so this has informed our engagement with the international community, particularly regional bodies, around the electoral process that's going to take place in Zimbabwe. You'll note that there's been a shift in approach by the region when it comes to elections. We saw the work that SADC did in Zambia, the work that they did in Malawi, the work that they continue to do in other jurisdictions. And so we're ensuring that we have a dossier of information that we give to them so that they're prepared and know from the get-go what's taking place in Zimbabwe. And all these facts are objectively verifiable. It's no secret, the torture that's taking place, the weaponization of the legal system, the court system, the abuse by ZANU-PF of the police service. All these things are being placed on record so that we ensure that there's no disputed election come 2023. Now, this is not just urgent domestically, it's also urgent for other regional actors, other countries. The forced migration crisis in Zimbabwe started to create domestic crises in other jurisdictions. Call it South Africa, call it Botswana, call it Zambia, wherever it is. So many of our citizens, and I think that the data tells us beyond 3 million, are forced to migrate because of the governance crisis, because of the economic crisis, because of the failure by ZANU-PF to rule us competently and constitutionally. Parents, pastors, teachers, work professionals, mentors, please, let's speak to our young. Let's encourage them to vote. Let's reinforce the message that voting works. Trust me, it does. It makes all the difference. But even beyond that, we have to participate to ensure that we're part of the change we want to see. Don't sit back and outsource your struggle to Ellen or Ian. Make sure you get involved. Like I said, we're just about to roll out a wide-ranging volunteer program, so there'll be space for everybody to get involved, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a creative, whether you're a doctor, whether you're an accountant, acting for change, whether you're an artist, a musician. There's space for everyone. Let's make this the biggest election that they've seen in the region. President Chamisa has already emphasized that the campaign that we're going to run for 2023 is going to be the biggest, the brightest. It's going to be a full campaign. We're going to continue to inspire hope, a thirst for change, emphasizing hope, accountability, and development so that we can build a Zimbabwe that we can all be proud of. So I re-emphasize, I can't emphasize enough, let's all register to vote. Thank you.